My name is Steve. I'm a Florida State licensed private investigator. My license number is C as in Charlie 1400195. Again, C 1400195. I'd like to start off this video message with a recording. This is Beth Fortin, a deputy with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office.
Hello? Okay. Please do it. Sure. Enjoy your day, Beth.
And I'm well aware about the courthouse. So don't think that I'm not.
What courthouse? You know, if you even bothered, to research, you would know the truth, but you don't.
I'll get back to that later. Again, that was Beth Fortin, a deputy with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, saying, I know about the courthouse and don't think I don't know about the courthouse. I have had for 4 years evidence of law enforcement officer harassment, misconduct, perjury, violation of policy and procedure, amongst other things. This covers members of the Volusia County Sheriff's Office and members of the New Smyrna Beach Police Department, and in part a clerk with the Volusia County Clerk's Office. Let me begin by telling you a story. 4 years in the making. It's nonfiction. On November 16th of 2012, I received a ticket for allegedly not wearing my seatbelt. On February 18th of 2013, I had a court hearing for that ticket. What happened during that court hearing is well documented, and I'll explain that now. Lori Baumeister, a clerk of the court with Volusia County, was working the courtroom that day. Hearing Judge Sino was the presiding judge. My name was called. I stood, walked to a podium in order to provide testimony for the ticket I received. The officer that wrote me the citation, Officer Kirkland of the New Smyrna Beach Police Department, was present in the courtroom before the proceeding began, but he left before the proceeding began. When my name was called again, I stood up. Lori Baumeister, the clerk of the court that day, did not call Officer Kirkland's name because he was not present. Instead, another officer, Officer Hunchard of the New Smyrna Beach Police Department, stood up, testified to a citation he did not issue, thus perjuring himself. I wrote a few letters to Hearing Judge Sino explaining this. I also included a picture of Officer Hunchard explaining exactly what happened that day in court. The officer that wrote the citation wasn't even present. He left. I saw him talking with Lori Baumeister before the proceeding began. He then left the courtroom, and Officer Hunchard, an officer who was nothing more than backup on my traffic stop, which resulted in the alleged citation, stood up, perjured himself, and testified to a ticket he did not issue. All Judge Sino told me was I had to appeal. So that was in February of 2013. Let's go to April 26th of 2013. The day after I wrote my second letter to Hearing Judge Sino explaining what happened in his own courtroom, I was served an injunction by Lori Baumeister, the clerk with Volusia County, the clerk who was working in the courtroom that day during my traffic court hearing in February. On May 8th, 2013, I had an injunction hearing, which during this hearing, the injunction against me was dismissed. Now, apparently there's members of the Sheriff's Office, members of the Clerk's Office who do not realize, I'm convinced after 4 years, that you can be accused of anything, but if there's no evidence to support the accusation is then dismissed in court. Again, the injunction against me was dismissed for lack of evidence. I showed up to the hearing without an attorney because, in my opinion, the truth is the best defense. Here is This is the original copy of the injunction I was served back in 2013. The original copy. What's ironic about this is on the very last page is, well, I'll get to that later. we'll come back to that. So again, to reiterate, on May 8th, 2013, I had a hearing for the injunction against me. It was dismissed for lack of evidence. Now, fast forward to January 13th, 2016. I was evicted from the property I was living in, from the home I was living in. On February 12th of 2016, my eviction was deemed illegal via prohibitive practices. I was awarded damages. During the eviction, in the weeks that followed after I was kicked out of the property, I had to return several times to retrieve my belongings. I was given very specific instructions on how to request a civil standby. I was given a phone number to call. I had to wait outside of the property, wait for several deputies to arrive, and then I was escorted onto the property so I could retrieve my belongings. There were 4 civil standbys I had to execute. Now, at one point, I filed a 3-page complaint with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office regarding my treatment by Deputy Beth Fortin. Who better than to squash an internal affairs investigation than, at the time, he was Chief Deputy Eric Dietrich. Eric Dietrich was running for the office of sheriff. Eric Dietrich ended up losing to Sheriff Mike Chitwood. After I had filed my complaint, I needed another civil standby to return to the property so I could retrieve my belongings. I called the number I was instructed to call, waited. I received a call back from a private number, and I believe, because I've spoken to her before, that it was Sherilyn Wilmot, W-I-L-M-O-T, a deputy with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. She returned my call and said, "We can't meet you for a civil procedure. You have to call the civil division, pay a fee, and set a date." Naturally, I was a bit confused. I simply said okay. Again, all the other times I had requested a civil standby, they were granted. I filed a 3-page complaint outlining lies, inconsistencies by several members of the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, and now all of a sudden, after that 3-page complaint, I'm not following the proper procedure according to Sherilyn Wilmot. I have to call the civil division, set a date, pay a fee, and it's timed. The fee that I pay is for having a deputy there with me for a certain amount of time. Anytime after that allotted time, it's a fee per hour basis. Now, let's go back to that recording. Beth Fortin, she denies saying it. She lied to the internal affairs investigators, even after I presented my evidence to them. What did Beth Fortin, a deputy with the sheriff's office, mean by this? I was waiting in the post office on Mission Road for a civil standby. This recording, obtained legally, occurred as Beth Fortin was walking away. The call was over. I was refused access. I was denied access to my property, despite having an agreement that is in text messages and verbalized with property owner Patty Harris. I was denied my property rights, amongst other things. Now, either Sherilyn Wilmot, another deputy with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, is lying or she's willfully ignorant. Sherilyn Wilmot was standing right next to Beth Fortin when Beth Fortin said this to me, and I got it on tape. It's obvious Sherilyn Wilmot is covering for Beth Fortin. Again, she's either lying, like everybody else is, or they're willfully ignorant. Their misconduct and harassment, violation of policy and procedure, is not my crime. It's not my responsibility to bear. There's several frame stories within this larger story, and I'll go into that. Many officers violated many directives and rules set forth by the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. FDLE, they have a law enforcement ethical standards of conduct. I have several copies, or I'm sorry, one copy of it here that clearly states that they violated ethical standards of conduct set forth by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Before Sheriff Chitwood took office, it appears cops were rewarded when they harass and intimidate people. I will state this about Sheriff Chitwood. With one phone call, he met with me, listened intently, and simply referred me to FDLE. I would like to thank him for that. That's the most progress I have received with the Sheriff's Office in 4 years. I find it interesting that on January 24th of this year, and I'm going to paraphrase this, Sheriff Chitwood said something along the lines of he couldn't understand why so many members of the Sheriff's Office were resistant to change. Something along the lines of officers would say, well, we wouldn't have done that before. I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised at all that these officers are saying that. Why were department resources wasted because of a lie? The lie being this injunction. Why didn't Beth Fortin know that the injunction was dismissed back in 2013? After all, it's public record. I thought that police officers were supposed to deal in facts, not slander and rumors. Apparently that's not the case with members of the Sheriff's Office before Sheriff Chitwood took office. I had a phone conversation with an internal affairs investigator. My girlfriend at the time also did. This internal affairs investigator, which I'll name if asked, was very surprised when I said I've been in the courthouses in DeLand, New Smyrna, and Daytona over the years, ever since 2013. I have every right to go in them. I am not banned from going in any courthouse. He was very surprised to hear this from me. Again, the injunction against me, the lies, were dismissed by a judge during a court hearing. Lastly, maybe someone with a different set of morals would have done something a long time ago with the information I have. I'm not a threat. I have never posed a threat to anybody. The only threat I pose to them is the truth I have, the documents I have. Many of them, the sheriff's own paperwork that proves that they violated their own policy and procedures. They harassed me because of a lie. What's this information I have that, again, I stated if I had a different set of morals, maybe I would have done something with this a year ago, or I'm sorry, several years ago in 2013. Again, this is the original copy of the injunction, the original. What is on the very last page of this injunction? But Lori Baumeister's, and I'm going to cover it up with my hand, under my fingers is the home address of Lori Baumeister, and as far as I know, the same address where her husband lives. I assume that was her husband who accompanied her to the court hearing for the injunction. Again, under my fingers, yes, I have the home address of a 30-year employee of the Volusia County Clerk's Office. Lori Baumeister knew this back in 2013 during the court hearing for the injunction because I stated it for the record. I showed her and her attorney. I showed the judge. Now, this is a highly litigious society. Surely, Lori Baumeister, an employee of the clerk's office for 30 plus years, from what I can tell, 30 plus years, surely she knows attorneys, people who could help her. There has never been a subsequent filing after the injunction was dismissed regarding the fact that I have her home address on the last page of the original injunction. Again, she's known this since 2013. I'm asking the public and anybody else within the Sheriff's Office who wants to help. I believe that Lori Baumeister was intimidated by the New Smyrna Beach Police Department officers, Kirkland and Hunchard, to file this false injunction against me. I would like the general public to send letters to me, letters of support for Lori Baumeister. I realize this is probably old school for a lot of people with email, etc. However, I'm going to give you my P.O. box. My full name is Steve. My last name is Paletti. P-A-O-L-E-T-T-I. My P.O. box is 413. Again, my last name is Paletti. P-A-O-L-E-T-T-I. My P.O. box is 413, New Smyrna Beach, Florida. 32170 is the zip code. I would like you to send me a letter simply stating one thing. In that letter, I would like you to state, "Dear Lori, we support you in coming forward to stopping this harassment and misconduct by law enforcement. Dear Lori, we support you in coming forward in stopping this harassment and misconduct by law enforcement." That's all. However you want to word it, just something along those lines, very simple, one sentence. I believe that Lori Baumeister needs our support. Lori, the clerk of the court, your friends and family, your co-workers will support you in coming forward and admitting what happened. You don't have to lie anymore, Lori. I know that these officers probably intimidated you in filing this false injunction against me for one reason and one reason only. Because I caught 2 officers lying in court, and it was their way of getting me to back off by intimidating you to file this injunction against me. As for Beth Fortin and several other members of the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, I have on record lying. Beth, I have never met a more arrogant and unself-aware cop as you. Not that long ago, I had to go into the New Smyrna Beach Courthouse Annex, which I have every right to go into. I walked up to the window in the clerk's office to ask a question, which I often do because my work involves speaking with clerks of the court. And I turned around, and out of the corner of my eye, I caught Beth Fortin doing something along the lines of, "It's him, it's him." Yes. You're what, Beth? A 10-year employee of the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, a deputy. You're a cop. And this is the behavior that you exhibit. Do you not read, Beth? Do you not know the facts? Or is your job and the job of your co-workers simply to violate policy and procedure based on slander, rumors, defamation, and innuendo? You don't act like a cop, Beth. You act more like a teenager wearing that costume of a police officer. That's what you act like. Again, I have never met a more arrogant and unself-aware cop in my life. You don't have to be arrogant, Beth. You already have the power. It's obvious you and many others don't respect that power. Next time you put on your uniform, Beth, this goes for all the other cops I have on record lying. Oh, which, by the way, I also have an internal affairs investigator lying with the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. I also have a deputy chief who blew me off, the deputy chief of the Volusia County Sheriff's Office and the deputy chief of the New Smyrna Beach Police Department. Yes, the deputy chief of the New Smyrna Beach Police Department lied on her initial application to the city of New Smyrna. Let me get this straight. I do not care how you perform the duties of your job unless it directly affects me personally and professionally. And it has. How you do your job as a cop has affected me. It's obvious Internal Affairs is not going to investigate their own mistakes and their own lies, their own misconduct. An independent outside investigator must be appointed, whether it comes from the state or the federal level. If this has happened to me for 4 years, who else do you think it may have happened to? There's a few officers I would like to thank for simply doing their jobs. Deputy Hansard, H-A-N-S-A-R-D, on July 21st, 2016, he was the officer that accompanied me for a paid civil standby. He followed policy and procedure, he was polite, professional, and he actually tried to help me out with an RV. Again, thank you for simply doing your job. Deputy Calkins, C-A-L-K-I-N-S. He allowed me to drive down and take a look at my property, despite the objection of the owner of the property. Why did Deputy Calkins allow me to do this? Because I have a right to look at my own property. I didn't violate any law by going to look at my own property. There was a deputy there. When I step outside myself and I look at this situation I've been dealing with for 4 years, I actually laugh, because sometimes when I'm going through stress, laughter helps. Until I realize that this is all true, and that, boy, I would love to be a fly on the wall for that meeting after I filed my 3-page complaint. It's quite obvious. Members of the sheriff's office, before Mike Chitwood, think that the more verbal fecal matter they could throw at people, maybe it'll drown you. You'll shut up. You'll go away. We'll keep throwing more verbal fecal matter at you in order to drown you, in order to get you to shut up. That doesn't work for me. These cops violated my rights to my own property. They harassed me. They violated policy and procedure. They violated their own ethics and standards, and the ethics and standards set forth by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. I've never seen a bunch of cops fumble around in order to try to cover up their own lies, and I have it on paper. I'd really like to know, why is one deputy, Beth Fortin, allowed to dictate policy and procedure? An internal affairs investigator told me over the phone, for years I've been a two-person response. Why? Because in their eyes I was a threat. I'm not a threat. There's not one document that proves I'm a threat. There's not one document that says I acted violently. Not one. Their mistake is not my responsibility to bear. Their misconduct, their harassment is not my responsibility to bear. The way I've been treated, it doesn't work for me. I'll end with this. I've been asked many, many times by officers, what do you hope to gain out of this complaint, Steve, out of the 3-page complaint I filed with Internal Affairs? Excuse me. What do you hope to gain? I was pretty clear in my response. I'm not going to repeat it. It's just logic. It's reasonable what I hope to gain. What do you officers hope to gain? What do you want from all this? I can already say, no, I'm not going to go away, so we'll see what happens. I'm also not going to stop until the officers responsible are held accountable. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sending me letters to the address I said before for Lori Baumeister. Lori Baumeister needs to know that we as a community support her. And lastly, isn't it ironic? I have the home address of the very clerk who accused me of stalking her, which is not true. This injunction is filled with nothing but lies. And apparently, after 4 years of this, I'm convinced that there are deputies. Maybe they have trouble reading, because if they just would have read this, they would have known. And all of this would have never happened. Thank you for your time.